Hi, my name is Cindi with the Fabric Patch, and today I'm going to show you how to make size 9 shoe. My daughter and I have owned and operated a busy quilt shop in Washington State for over 20 years. We have a retreat center, an active YouTube channel, and a large pattern line featuring our creations. My two sons work on machines. One daughter-in-law is our videographer, and the other is a long-arm quilter. We are a family that love each other, we laugh together, and every once in a while we get some work done. We have a crew that are saints for their efforts at keeping us on track. Thanks for joining us on our wild ride. Okay, so what is great about this quilt is that it's all made out of scrappy stuff. The scrappier, the better. If every block looked different, that would be super interesting. So you can use stuff that you've cut up, or you can do some pre-cuts. If you do pre-cuts, you will need 5 charm packs, and charm packs are pre-cut 5-inch squares. This particular line is called a blooming bunch, and if you're a fan of Marsha Brady, or in real life her name is Maureen McCormick, she is now a fabric designer, and this little 70s flare fabric is her line, which is currently on sale on the website. Another option is this apricot and ash. This is just a really beautiful soft pastel-y kind of colorway, which is really nice. And if you do one of these, you need 4 of them, and the reason that you need 4 is because you need 4 matching blocks, and we're going to talk about color in just a second, but you'll need 4 of something that kind of goes together. Your other option, if you want to do a pre-cut, is you could do your 10-inch squares. These are called layer cakes. They're called every company has kind of a different name for them, but you can oftentimes find pre-cuts. And on the back of a Moda one, they come with this little paper that shows you they've already cut it into a perfect 10-inch square, but what if you want to do something different? Well, what you can do is you can cut that 10-inch square in half and in half again, and you've got 4 perfect 5-inch squares. And so that's what I would do with this one, because again, this is just your nice 10-inch square, and all you'd have to do is, I'm just going to cut this one because I'm going to show you, put my glasses on, what you would do, taking my, I'm just going to turn to the side, cut it in half again. And I now have perfect 5-inch squares. So what you'll do when we look at colors is you have 4 pieces that you're going to use alternating with 4 other pieces. So again, when we mentioned that you would need 4 5-inch squares, whether it's from 4 packets or 4 5-inch squares that you've cut up a 10-inch square from. They're going to go here, or they're going to go here. And I want you to see that this is actually 4 different fabrics, but I've put them in 4 different configurations. So you can see this one was used here or here. This one was used in both places. This one was used in both places, and so was this one. So sometimes we'll do quilts, and it's important to know where your light is and where your dark, and they'll tell you that in the pattern, to put the lights here, to put the darks there, or to put the reds here and the blues there. This is not a quilt like that. This quilt, just pick 2 that you like that go together, kind of go together. Don't overthink it too much, but just put the 2 together because it's going to be kind of scrappy and they're going to be everywhere. Light and dark doesn't matter. Dark and dark doesn't matter. What does matter is your centerpiece. So your centerpiece, this is what is going to make up that little shoe fly block. So these are your 5-inch squares. So for this you will need a yard of fabric. That is going to be what we would be calling a focus fabric. So this is something that you're going to see in every single block, and it's something that's going to bring it together. So it could just be a beautiful fabric that you think is absolutely gorgeous and has something to do with all of those other colors, or it could be some bright orange, bright pink, something else, something that is going to kind of pull it all together. You will also use this piece, I would suggest, as an outside border. One other thing before we go too far is I want to talk about size. If you do 4 packets or 1 layer cake, you're really looking at about 3.5 yards total. That's all cut up. You're going to end up with a 54-inch square quilt. If you want it to be bigger, just make more blocks. Buy more squares, buy another layer cake, add a fabric of your own, do whatever you'd like to do, but 3.5 yards only goes so far, and it's going to be 54 by 54. Your other option is to just add more borders if you'd like to do that. You'll add your center square, I think should be a border, and then you could add more borders so that you make your quilt a little bit bigger, something that might fit your couch a little better or fit a bed. All right, so what we've done is I have a couple of these in here. The other thing I'm going to do though, what's real important is I'm going to clean up my table for a second, and then I'm going to show you how to put your little corners on. We'll do that first before we sew our 9 patch together. Okay, so I have my blocks kind of positioned down here, but people often ask about my notions, so just for 2 seconds I want to mention that my favorite rotary cutter is the Quilters Select. They do tend to be a little bit more expensive than some of the others, but it's because they are so heavy, which is kind of nice because a heavy iron will do all of your work for you when you're pressing, and a heavy rotary cutter does the same thing. It's also all metal, and so you'll go through the blades the same way, but at least you don't break the back of your rotary cutter like some of the others do. It's also a very true right or left, so I really like that. The other thing that I use for marking on my fabric, which we're going to do in a second, I like the Frixion marker. Not everybody likes it. Some people want to do pencil. I prefer this. It comes off with an iron, comes in lots of different colors, and if you're doing pencil or something else like that, you have to worry about how that mark is going to come off. You just want to make sure that you never, ever, ever, ever use like a ballpoint ink. That kind of marker has no place anywhere in your fabric. It's gonna go get all over the place and it doesn't come off. Third thing, you don't have to use this ruler. I'm just going to show you how it's different. If you've already purchased it because you've watched Brianna's Tri-Dazzle technique, you probably already have this, and I'm going to show you that we're using it the same way in this one. If you do not have this ruler, I'll also show you how to use just a basic plain ruler. Fourth and last notion that I use all the time is my little mister. So I like best press instead of starch just because it doesn't gum anything up, it doesn't leave a white residue, nothing has to be cleaned off. So I like the best press, but when you spray with the best press, it's just a little inexpensive spray nozzle, and so it kind of goes everywhere. What's nice about the mister, you'll see as I'm pressing during this class, it truly mists out. It lasts a whole lot longer, very controlled, and it's just it's just more economical use of your best press. So, and it's just refillable. So then instead of buying this, it's just easier to buy the refillable size and fill your own. You can also use them if you would rather press with water, or if you have your own starch solution that you use, homemade starch solution, whatever you'd like. So anyway, those are my notions. But whatever you have will work great. What makes this nice is that it's a super simple project, fun to piece, no way you're going to mess up at all. All right, so what I've done is I've moved here my 4 fabrics, my other 4 fabrics, and I have my little center block. All of these happen to be 5-inch squares. These are 2.5-inch squares. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay this on top. And ideally, of course, what's happening is this little half square triangle is going to be on all of these corners. And sometimes you have to be very careful when you're piecing, and the pattern is going to say make sure you're doing the left side or the short side or the long side. This doesn't matter. You're just going to pick a corner, because when you pick that corner, if you've sewn it on something different, you can turn it any way you want to. Does that make sense? So you'll be all right. So I laid it here just so you can see it, but for our piecing and marking process, I'm going to move these out of the way for a second. So here's my light ones. All I'm going to do is put this in the corner, in a corner, whichever one I want, and I need to put my glasses on. And then I'm going to make my little mark. So if you just have a regular ruler, all you're going to do is, and I don't have to have that positioned perfectly yet, all I need to do is take all of these, put my ruler from point to point on the diagonal, get my little Frixion marker, which comes out looking like ballpoint ink, but again, it totally comes off with an iron. And I'm going to mark that line. Once I've marked that line, then what I'm going to do is put it in that corner, and I'm either going to pin it, I'm going to grab my Wonder clips, and I'm just going to clip that. And I prefer Wonder clips over pins only because the Wonder clips are easy on and easy off, and they don't distort anything as I'm pinning. So I like a Wonder clip. So if you do have this ruler, this is just a quick quarter ruler. It's like $2, $2.75, something like that. And what's nice about this is you're going to do that same idea. You're going to put this so that you can see right through this little groove in here. You can see that I've got my point up here and I've got my point right there, and I'm just going to draw my line. But then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw here. Now in Brianna's Tri-Dazzle class, she had you draw on both sides. I'm only going to have you draw on one, because what's actually going to happen again, I'm just going to kind of fuss and get that there, is that for this particular pattern, I am going to sew on that center line right there. So I'm going to sew right there, and then 1/4 of an inch past that I'm going to cut. Or this version where I just drew my line, I'm going to sew right on that line, and I'll just measure over 1/4. I'm going to sew those really quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so you can see maybe that I have sewn this line right here, and again I've sewn it right here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 1/4 of an inch past that sewn line. So I can go ahead and take my ruler, find my 1/4 of an inch mark, and if you look on your ruler, of course you've got a 1/2 inch, and then you've got just that long little dash there. And this isn't super critical. This is just your seam allowance. So if you don't cut this straight, or if it's 3/8 inch instead of 1/4 inch, nothing super bad is going to happen because it's just your seam allowance. It's just that you really do want to cut these off. Some people, sometimes they'll press it over and they'll leave that in there believing that they have extra stability in their block. And I guess that's probably okay, but what's really going to happen is you're going to have massive amounts of fabric in your seam allowance. All of that fabric that you're going to keep sewing through. So I would not do it. And if you're very industrious, you could turn these into little baby half square triangles for a future project. So this one, what's kind of nice is since I used this ruler, this was the one that I marked the center that I sewed, and then I marked that other edge. What can happen is I can use my ruler and I don't have to worry about where that 1/4 inch mark is. I just know that I'm cutting right on top of, oops, if I cut all the way through, oh, I guess I did. I'm just cutting right on top of that line. So now that I've done that, now I'm going to go ahead and press. So I'm just going to, I always just like to set my seam, and all that really does is it just kind of gets everything kind of flat, ready to go, and then I'm just going to press that open. And then I'm going to do my next one. My iron's not quite hot yet. There we go. And then I'm just going to show you what this looks like, but then I'm going to go ahead and do all of them. So I haven't done anything else. That's all. And then these blocks are going to go up here. Now what is particularly nice about this quilt is that these little half square triangles, they don't match up with anything. Let me get this out of the shot here. They don't line up with anything. Sometimes you do quilts where everything has to line up perfectly because that point has to line up with another point, or this point has to line up with another point, but that was loud. But for this, it totally doesn't matter. That's why you really don't have to worry about it. It's just going to make this cute little block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to really quick sew my other points, draw my lines, sew on my lines, trim those off, press those, put the other blocks up, and then I'm going to do the same thing with these 4, and then we'll be right back. All right, so you can see we've got 4 of the blocks done, and you can see how varied it all is. So I like the idea that it's a little mixed up and you've got all kinds of different colors with lights together, darks together, lights, mediums, and darks. If you want something a little bit more organized, you can do lights and mediums with something dark in the center, but again, I like something that's a little bit unexpected, because what you've got is all kinds of sparkly color in the background and these little shoe fly blocks that are really kind of the star of the show so much. So your blocks are, at this moment, they're about 15 inches. When we get them done, they're going to be 13.5-inch block, which is kind of large. So what I would do is lay them all out a little bit, and I'm going to show you there's an easy way just to piece these together. We'll press them, and then after that you can take all of your blocks, we're going to lay them all out and decide how we want them to be arranged. But for me, the way that I will piece a nine patch is I'm just going to go ahead and sew my seams for my top row, sew my seams for my second row, and sew my seams for my third row, and then sew them all together. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these blocks together, get a few more, and then we'll be back at the wall. Okay, I thought I would just go ahead and show you the way that I piece a block. So you certainly can just sew your top row, press it, sew your middle row, press it, sew your third row, but I'm just going to show you kind of a little cheater way. And so what I do when I have a 9 patch like this, I'm just going to flip over my top, my bottom, my third row, and I'm going to chain piece it. So if you are a pinner, this would be your spot where you would pin. If you've sewn with me before, you know that I tend to not be a pinner. I am sewing on a FAF Creative 3.0, and what's nice about this particular machine is that when I stop sewing, I don't know if you noticed, but my little presser foot lifts up and my needle stops in the down position. The other thing, and I'm going to sew to the end, and again, see my foot came up, and I've sewn all the way off the end and I've stopped. Now I'm getting my next one. Just going to make sure that those are perfectly together. I'm going to butt those up. I'm using my 1/4-inch foot, so there's a little blade on there, and I'm just going to go ahead and keep sewing. And if I have to stop and adjust, my needle stops in the down position, so that kind of holds everything in place. And I sew all the way off to the end. The reason you want to sew to the end is because you want to make sure that you're kind of paying attention to your seam allowance all the way through the stitch. I'm going to butt that right up against the needle. Keep sewing. Oop, something bad happened. And then when you get to the end, we're going to cut it. And then, and if you notice that when you're sewing through things, when you hear that funny little, like it bogged down through multiple seams, it's because it's time to change your needle. So when you heard that little thunk, it just means your needle is getting dull. So after this seam, I will do that. Needles are inexpensive, what, $2.95 for 5. There's no reason to fuss with your stitching. All right, so I'm not going to clip anything apart. Normally with chain piecing, that's what would happen, is now I would snip those. Do not snip those. I'm going to start up at the top of the block again, and I would show you what I'm technically doing, and I'm going to do this. Sorry, Brittany, you went right in on that shot, didn't you? So technically what I'm doing is I'm taking these 3 and now I'm putting them over on top of these 3. But I don't really have to come all the way up to my table or all the way over to my work table. I'm actually going to do this right here from the sewing machine. So I've got this one. I'm just going to grab this one and put it right sides together like that. And again, if you're a pinner, this is the spot where you would pin. I kind of feel like I can hold it together for 5 inches, so I kind of keep going. Bump, bump, hear that? That is the sound of a dull needle. Now open this one up, right sides together. Flip this over. Butt it right up against it. Stop with my needle in the down position. And again, I've sewn all the way to the end. Open this one up. Take my next one. And I'll look at it anyway just to make sure that the block looks like it should. Flip it over right sides together. Line it up. Butt it right up against that needle. And this is why I usually sew with a stiletto, just to kind of poke those seams down so everything is going in the right direction. And people ask all the time if we should backstitch. There's very few times that you need to backstitch, because in quilting, you'll see here in a second, you sew over every seam. All right, so when you hold this up, since you haven't clipped them apart, it's almost as if those little threads where we've butted those together, those are almost little pins holding your block into place. And so now all I have to do is sew my horizontal rows. So I'm just going to flip that over, and I know exactly that those little threads are holding those pieces in place. And so what I'm going to do is sew this and nestle those seams. So again, I'm just going to 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to stop. And a nestled seam just means that one's going one way and one's going the other, and so what'll happen is it will lock into place right there. And you can kind of feel where that locks in. And see, like here's an example. I'm sewing over every seam, and so you don't have to worry so much about the back stitching. You just have to stop and make sure that those corners are lined up. Nestle my little seam right there. All right, so that is my first horizontal seam. Just going to do the next one. Flip that over, and again, if you didn't see that nestled seam from before, I'll show you from up here. But what's happening is you're just, it's essentially your, well, I can't show you with my fingers. You're locking it in so that that'll kind of lock in that stitch right there. I feel like we must show that up close in just about every video. And you can kind of feel it, that that seam is locked in together there. that was my last seam. Maybe I'll sit down. And so now all I have to do is press my block. So it works out really well because then all of my corners come out. I haven't mixed anything up. And when we press it, again, the whole idea with pressing is that what I usually do is I will give it, seeing this, that mixture, see how that works? Just a tiny little bit comes out, so it's really nice. I usually kind of fuss with where my seams are, just for a second, just to make sure that everything is laying the way that it should. And then I press from the front just to make sure all of those seams are open. It is not critical that all of your seams lay in a certain direction, because when you quilt, this is on the inside anyway, nobody's going to see it, nobody's going to feel it, it's not going to be lumpy. What's most important is that everything, all of your seams are pressed open so that your block is the right size. This block is going to be 13.5 inches. What is also nice is that if you have to square this block up for some reason, if something weird happened, you can easily be squaring things up and you're not going to cut off any points because your points are clear in here and not lining up with anything. So anyway, I'm going to press this block and then I have a few more blocks to make. Okay, so I have at the moment 9 of the blocks done. And so you can see that sometimes I'll put a light with a light, sometimes I'll put a dark with a dark, and it doesn't really matter. I think it's kind of fun. I think it kind of mixes it up just a little bit. And I want to talk to you about a couple things. One is that on your pattern, it does show you that if you're doing just 1 layer cake or 4 charm packs, you're going to end up with a 54 by 54 inch quilt before you put any borders on it. But you can just add more blocks. And we give you all of the size measurements for that. We also show you to put it together without sashing. And I really like that look. People have asked before, if I want to put a sashing in there, how big should the sashing be? I think that you should think of sashing as an outline. If you're going to put a little border around something, how big should that border be? And I don't know that I've ever made sashing more than a 2.5 inch cut or a 2 inch finished. I think that something small is kind of nice because really all you're doing with the sashing is you're just separating your blocks with something that is maybe an additional color, a contrast color, something like that. So that's always an option. If you don't know how to add sashing, Brianna's Tri-Dazzle video is really good. She talks about sashing, she talks about cornerstones, and so it'll give you a good tutorial about that. This particular quilt though, I would put them all together. I like this look because then what's happening is, let me just show you here. It is a little bit, what's the word, I guess, curious, because you think, well, wait a minute, where exactly is the block? Because there's a lot going on. You might see those little shoe fly blocks in there, but the rest of it is just kind of interesting. So, and that's why I think where you've decided to put those colors, light on light, dark with dark, green here, green over there, maybe these two go together, maybe they don't. It totally doesn't matter. It's just sparkly little bits in the background. And the only real pattern is the fact that you've got 4 and 4. Now, here's a thought. If you just want to mix the whole thing up and do nothing but lots of leftover pieces, cut up all these leftover 5 inch squares from all of these things you've been doing, and only have one consistent fabric, which is your shoe fly block, that would be absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It would be a gorgeous quilt. Easy to complete, and again, you can make it any size, just keep making your blocks. These blocks are 13.5 inches finished, so it's a good size block. So anyway, I'm just going to piece a few more blocks at the end. We'll kind of show you the whole thing done, but I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial, and I hope that you'll make this quilt. If you feel like you need a pattern, we do have a downloadable pattern or a printed pattern on our website. I think there's probably a link below. Or if you've taken good notes, it's just 5 inches and 2.5 inches. So thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.